Okay, I'm gonna wait just a second. Hi, Jillian. Hi, Stuart. Okay. Hi, I can't pronounce your name. Hi, Candace. Okay, I was just gonna hop on here really quick. I was gonna do a live with Zev Shalev, and we decided to postpone it because we have to think about what we're gonna talk about a little bit more. I wasn't sure. I haven't planned what I'm gonna say at all, so bear with me. I wasn't sure with this week being what it was, um, if I was going to talk about Charlie Kirk at all. Um, Generally, my stance is if something's a really huge news story, I don't write about it because everybody's writing about it, and what good does my extra version of the same thing really do or say? So generally, if there's like a huge breaking news story, you won't see me write an article about it, at least right away. I may do like follow up, like for example, the Butler's Pennsylvania story. I did a follow up because I did kind of an analysis of all the things that are, factual in hindsight, and what is conspiracy and what is, measurements and accurate investigation and what's, questionable. So I'll do things like that. But I generally, if something is especially a fresh news story where we don't have all the information yet, I won't usually write about it because everybody's writing about it. You don't need one more person to say the exact same thing or have just my opinion thrown out there, right? My stance on it, though, something that I wanted to talk about because I've heard a lot, mostly from the left because I vote left. The people I hang out with are pretty much on the Democrat blue side. My family is more on the right red side, I guess, the right hand red side. But there's been a little bit of a divide on the left as far as like how we react to something like the death of Charlie Kirk. I've had some time to have some introspection about it this week. We had, as you probably saw, we had kind of a major catastrophe in our own lives with friends and family this week where we lost a kiddo at my son's school that he used to go to. And so just thinking about that and the unexpected death of somebody who's very innocent, like this little boy was, kind of puts everything else into perspective about how we deal with death, and what we're capable as humans of doing, and then what we're not capable of controlling. Charlie Kirk was, um, he was a person who spouted a lot of hatred. Thank you, Dimitri. He was a person who spouted a lot of hatred or espoused a lot of hatred, wrapped up in a lot of like narrative from different political parties, political sides, groups, religious backgrounds, religious tenets. Um, you know, the people that I talk to or who I see posting on Facebook, who are people that I love dearly, who liked Charlie Kirk, are very devastated, and they didn't see things as hatred. They didn't see things as harming other groups of people. They saw it as helping people to have better lives and to get out of sin and, check the box, check the box, check the box. I've lived on both sides of those lines, having grown up in that life and, reading a lot, being around a lot of people, learning, listening more than I talk. I am now on more of the left-hand side of things. But Something that we all kind of saw this week was the divide on the left side about how we dealt with the death of somebody who we saw as a bad person who said bad things. You had people who got very quiet, who were very empathetic, or not even empathetic, but just shocked and upset, visibly, vocally. And then you would have people that you would see kind of like, dancing in the streets, right? We have that at work. We have that in our homes. We have that on social media. We all know people who are kind of on both sides. Um, Everything that I'm about to say is my personal opinion. It's based on nothing. I would venture to say, I would bet that even the people who are out there saying that they are dancing or celebrating in the moment of finding out that Charlie Kirk had been killed, had been shot to death on stage in front of a live audience, in front of adults and children, on live television, that in that moment that they first heard about it, it was shocking and it didn't feel good, right? It was a gut punch. And we can look at the whole picture of how much he has traumatized different groups of people and recognize that, but also recognize that as humans, we're probably not wired to see death as it happens and be okay with it. When we're in a situation where we know somebody has died in a brutal manner, where we have the opportunity, and I hope we don't choose it, but we have the opportunity to literally see it happen, we as humans in general are not wired to celebrate that. We are wired to be shocked by that, saddened by that, horrified by that. That is a natural, normal response. Now, not everybody does. Not everybody is wired that way. There are people who are born without empathy, and not because they're bad people, right? I don't know if anybody has read Patrick Gagney's book, Memoir of a Sociopath. It's really, really good. It talks about what it's like to have sociopathy and the inability to empathize with people. It's a real thing. It doesn't mean that you're a killer or a criminal. It just means that you're not wired for empathy. So there are people who are not wired to empathize or to respond in the same way. But in general, most people would struggle seeing somebody die. And so I think that's kind of the internal struggle we've had this past week, is knowing somebody who did things that we believe were very wrong, very harmful, very hurtful, is now gone. Do we celebrate that, or do we recognize that it was still a murder? It was still a pretty awful situation. It was pretty horrific for anybody who saw it. I did not. I know my limits. So that's the first thing. The second part of that is knowing that when you take out somebody who is the leader of something, and in so doing you make a martyr out of them, you basically inflate the message that they were trying to give, right? By making a martyr, as he's being perceived right now, out of Charlie Kirk, whatever his message was, the entire platform will now be funded more, will now have a louder bullhorn, will now have the entire Republican Party behind it, will have the entire FBI behind it. The guy who shot him will get the full force of the law. He likely will get the death penalty. I mean, if anybody's going to get the death penalty, he will, because he has Trump's army behind this entire investigation. So I don't really get the celebration, because it wasn't one guy. Now we have a whole system behind the Charlie Kirk show. So it's not, even if you're a person who is dancing and celebrating, it's not going to go away. So he was a bad person, but the things he was saying is still, it's now getting more credibility, and it's now getting more coverage, and it will now get bigger and bigger and bigger. And he will continue to be a martyr, and he will, they're not Catholic, but whatever they can get as close to sainthood, they will give him, right? So those were just my thoughts. And again, it's just my opinion. But I don't think there should be any guilt in the empathy of watching someone die and feeling bad about that. You know, I was thinking about if it was someone like a Saddam Hussein, if while Saddam Hussein was alive, was giving a speech on TV, this terrible, awful dictator who kills people, kills his own people, if he was shot live on TV, that would still be shocking and would still be a gut punch. Would we be glad? Probably. But would we have wanted to see it? No. Would it be hard to think about? Yes. Charlie Kirk, I'm not saying he's on the level of Saddam Hussein, but I'm just saying, like, it's not mutually exclusive to hate him and his message or dislike him and his message or want him and his message to stop being a message, but also feel bad about a person's life being snuffed out in such a violent manner. That was my take on it. Now, I at first thought, well, you know, I'm also not a targeted group by Charlie Kirk, but he did kind of target women. But I get that, like, he targeted other groups really, really, really intensely, and he harmed them and he put them in harm's way. And so feelings may be different if you're a member of any one of those groups that he targeted. But I do think, going back to what I said, I do think that we are wired for empathy. And it's hard to turn that off, and we're not supposed to turn that off. Like, it's a human emotion and a human reaction that we're supposed to have. And so yeah, anyway, those are my thoughts. You didn't ask. So I'm going to pop off and I'm going to continue to do Epstein stuff, and I'm going to get some coffee because I have not had coffee yet today. So thank you all for listening to my drivel, and I will talk to you later.